say that this is one of the small topics under the broad LIDISKI project that is being organized currently in Nigeria. So, Peste, the petits ruminants, like my colleague said, is a contagious transboundary disease. You can find it mainly in sheep and goats, and it's been present in Africa, in Asia, and in the Middle East. Most importantly, endemic in Nigeria since 1975. And so we have vaccines being produced by the Institute. The Institute produced the first vaccine for use in the continent of Africa. Now, despite the fact that vaccines have been available since all this period, we still have sporadic outbreaks. And so animal mobility has been found to be one of the risk factors that contribute to the introduction and spread of PPR. So there are two types of movements in the country. We have transhumans. We have people like farmers who walk from one part of the country to the other with their sheep and their goat, and as they migrate, the disease migrates to them. And you have commercial, those who sell primarily. And so the data that we have is we have like an absence of animal indication systems. We have permeable borders, and we have like absence of centralized control and surveillance system, which you know, hopefully the LIDISKI system, LIDISKI project is helping us to address. Yes, still on the LIDISKI project, one of the major goals is to improve disease surveillance and control of PPR among smallholder farmers in northern Nigeria. But for this project, I would attempted to map the commercial and transhumans ruminants movement to and from these three LIDISKI states, and to identify the potential risk areas to inform disease surveillance and control using animal mobility field surveys and expert knowledge. And so those are the three states in three out of the 6 geographical zones that we picked in northern Nigeria. That is the Plateau, Bauchi, and Kano. Okay, so we picked, like my colleague said, we picked these states because of the presence of large numbers of small ruminants and in the country, and also because of previous outbreaks that have been occurring in these environments. And so our methods, we did a market survey where we used questionnaire interviews, and then we also did focus group survey. So this market survey and focus group survey happened in 10 markets in 10 local governments in these 3 states. And so why we decided to use the 2 different methods was, you know, in the process of collecting the information, they may not give us all the total information with regards to where the animals are coming from and where they are going to. So we needed to complement and complete this information with the focus group discussion. Okay, and then the information from there was geolocalized and transformed, and then we did a network analysis which involved description of the mobility network and structure, the global measures and the central measures. Then this information was then imputed for the risk assessment. And so how did we do the risk assessment? We did a stakeholders meeting, and in the stakeholders meeting of experts, we first of all identified the risk factors, also together with some literature review that was done, and then we weighed the factors. After weighing the factors, we then put them into layers with which the basic administrative units used was the LGAs, and then we put all the information in layers, and then we combined them to be able to have the risk maps. So the risk maps were, the result was in 4 categories: the very high risk areas, the high risk areas, medium, and the low risk areas, in that order. And so I said this already. Okay, so our results, so what we discovered was like there are 36 states in Nigeria, and from these LIDISKI states we were able to find movement in 33 states, and that is really huge. However, for the market network, we had 27 states, and in the focus group between these two networks, there was 22 states in common. So, yeah, and then we had more movements in the focus group network compared to the more movement in the focus group compared to. We had more movement in the focus group compared to the market network. Okay, so with regards to the global measures, we discovered that there were not many nodes in both networks. Well, but both networks were above 100 nodes, and then the links too, there were not so many links like that. However, both networks were highly connected, and then we had like we had a sparse diameter with very few links and connections in both networks, and we had low diameter, and we also had high heterogeneity. And so the low diameter just shows that, okay, you could get, the disease can be spread to the different areas, local governments within the network, even though it's just occurring at a relatively fast rate. And then we had presence of hubs, which showed that like the heterogeneity helped us to be able to identify presence of hubs that showed us more important LGAs for disease control and areas that we should concentrate with regards to surveillance and control. Okay. So that's in the with regards to the central measures. The Guazo, Woodil, and Alkaleri received more sheep and goats, and Bukuru in Jos North and Alkaleri markets were super spreaders. However, Jos North and Guazo, that is in both, that's Jos North here, and Guazo supplied more small ruminants to the network. And then we were able to identify communities which are just clusters of LGAs. So the LGAs are highly clustered that can facilitate the spread of this disease in these networks. And so the whole point of these communities was that it helps us to be able to track the disease. We identified more communities in the focus group, which is the one on the right, and less communities in the market, which is the one on the left. But as a group, as a whole combined network, we were able to identify 6 communities that show that, and they were multi-state. They were multi-state, so movement was happening across different local governments and different states. So using the NCDA approach, according to the respondents, the stakeholders, respondents, Bauchi, Kano, and Plateau all showed that, okay, mobility was quite important in the occurrence and the spread of PPR occurring in those areas. And so the 5 risk factors that they spoke about included climate, stroke grazing, animal density, presence of water bodies, and mobility and market movement, and then transhumance. So we can see that for Bauchi, grazing contributed the most to the occurrence of PPR in that area, followed by market mobility. In Kano, we can see that market mobility contributed the most, followed by the climate and grazing. And then in Plateau, we see that transhumance contributed the most, followed by the mobility. So when we put them all together, we were able to find out that in Bauchi we had 10%. So Bauchi has about 20 local governments, so we had 10% of the LGAs occurring in very high-risk areas. Kano has about 44 LGAs, so we had about 4.5% occurring in very high-risk areas, and Plateau had about 17 local governments, and so we had 35% occurring in these very high-risk areas, and those are the local governments. So, in conclusion, we've been able to identify that mobility is one of the main factors for the occurrence of this disease, and then combining these 2 methods help us to be able to find out LGAs that are present in 1 and that were not present in the other, and so help us to be able to get a complete network. Then secondly, 22 states were in common, which is relatively high for an area of movement occurring out of 36 states in the country, even though in both networks we had 27 states each. And then we also discovered that the heterogeneities, they were high, and so that indicated the presence of hubs, which we need to monitor for surveillance and control. And like I said earlier, we identified between 4% and 35% at very high risk. So what's the whole point of this work? We hope that targeted vaccination campaigns will be able to occur in these identified LGAs, and that policymakers will be able to now effectively allocate more resources to control of this disease. Thank you.